The Cold War was fought with more than just spies and bombs, its darkest secrets had a pulse and a thirst for blood. My life's mission was to kill one of those secrets, but this isn't a story about hunting a monster, it's about the moment you realize you've aimed your entire life at the wrong target. There are two kinds of ghosts, you see. There's the kind you hear about in stories, the rattling chains, the mournful specter in the window. They're echoes of a life cut short, trapped in a loop of their final moments. Annoying, maybe even sad. But they're just recordings. They can't hurt you. Then there's the other kind. The real kind. The ghost that walks around in your own skin. The one that looks back at you from the mirror, wearing your face, using your hands, but the light behind the eyes has gone out. It remembers your life, your loves, your losses, but it doesn't feel them. It just observes. A silent, eternal passenger in a body that's no longer its own. My name is Viktor Sokolov, and I've been both kinds of haunted. For 40 years, I was haunted by a memory. Now I'm the ghost in the machine. And I'd give anything to feel the terror of that first haunting again. It all started in a place that the modern world forgot, a small old believer village tucked away in the vast, unforgiving expanse of Siberia. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have doctors. We had the old ways, the old gods. Perun the Thunderer, Veles of the underworld. To us, they weren't myths. They were the management. When people died of old age, we'd say Veles had called his sheep home. But sickness was new. It was an invader. It started with a man named Boris, a bear of a man whose beard was as legendary as his strength. He caught a fever that wouldn't break. We watched him wither, consumed from the inside out until he was a fragile husk. The elders blamed spirits, curses. Then his family fell. Then another. A plague, silent and swift, was gutting our village. And then it came for my father. I was 11. I remember the cold that night. It was a physical presence, a weight in the air that had nothing to do with the weather. It was the kind of deep, primal dark that makes a child's mind conjure monsters from shadows. I wish they had stayed shadows. I woke up, not to a sound, but to a feeling. The feeling of being watched. I looked towards my parents' bed, and reality fractured. It was crouched over my father. A silhouette, tall and impossibly thin, made of what looked like shimmering, condensed fog. It was almost transparent, but just solid enough to be sickeningly real. Its limbs were too long, its fingers like black, bony twigs. Its head was pressed to my father's throat, and though I couldn't see the details, I knew what it was doing. The faint, coppery scent of blood hit the air, thick and cloying. I must have made a sound, a gasp, a whimper, because it stopped. It straightened up, unfolding like a nightmarish insect, its long arms dangling almost to the floor. And it looked at me. Its face was a blur of mist, except for 2 points of burning, crimson light its eyes. A smile stretched across its indistinct features, a gash of white, needle-sharp teeth stained dark at the gums. The image was burned onto my soul with a psychic branding iron. It raised one skeletal finger to its lips in a universal gesture, SHHH. And I, an 11-year-old boy paralyzed by a level of fear no human is built to withstand, simply nodded. Tears streamed down my face, but I was silent. It gave a slow, satisfied nod of its own, then dissolved back into the oppressive darkness, slithering away into the night. The next morning, my father had the fever. Every single night, it returned. And every single night, I watched, frozen in my bed, a silent, helpless witness to my father being drained of his life. I was a boy raised on tales of men who fought bears and wolves to protect their kin. And I did nothing. The shame was a poison more potent than the fever. I told myself, every day, tonight, I will scream. I will fight. But every night, the terror locked my jaw and turned my limbs to lead. He was gone within a month. At his burial, a foolish, childish hope bloomed in my chest. It's over. It's satisfied. How naive. Nature abhors a vacuum, and a predator is never satisfied. A few weeks later, I woke up to that same soul-deep chill. I snapped my head towards my mother's bed. She was alone, sleeping peacefully. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was a liar's comfort. I knew. I stayed awake all night, a stone clutched in my fist, ready to be the man I had failed to be for my father. It never came back. It didn't need to. The next morning, my mother was burning. It had done its work in silence. A single, unseen visit was all it took. Her decline was faster, and far more horrific. It wasn't just a fever, it was rabies. She became delirious, thrashing, barking like a dog, her eyes wide with a madness I cannot describe. The woman who had sung me to sleep now tried to bite my hands when I brought her water. She died screaming. By then, the village was a ghost town. And then the Soviets came. Not soldiers, but men in sterile, white biohazard suits. They moved with an unnerving efficiency, rounding up the few surviving children. They called it a rescue. They told the world an ancient strain of anthrax had been released from the permafrost. The bite marks? Infected sores, they said. A convenient lie. I fought them. I screamed to be left in my home, in that hell, because it was the only thing I had left. But I was just a boy. They dragged me away, to an orphanage, to civilization. They tried to fix me, to treat the trauma. But you can't treat a wound that's still being held open by a promise. A promise I made to the ghost of my father, I would find the thing that did this. And I would erase it from the world. My life was given a singular purpose. I didn't become a priest or a folklorist. Vengeance required a modern toolkit. My official records say I became a virologist, a specialist in hemorrhagic fevers. My unofficial life, the real one, was spent in the shadows. The Soviet Union, in its infinite, brutal wisdom, didn't just put me in an orphanage. My unique childhood experience made me a person of interest. I was funneled into a special program, a clandestine unit tasked with understanding and weaponizing the very horrors they publicly denied. They called it Project Veles. The irony was a bitter pill. They had given me the keys to the kingdom I sought to burn down. For decades, I hunted. Not just for my creature, but for its kind. I learned they were not supernatural demons, but victims of a retrovirus of impossible origin. A virus that rewrote their biology, turning the heart into a vestigial pump and the digestive system into a simple sac for holding blood. They were technically, biologically, undead. They hibernated for years, even decades, between feedings. They were solitary, thank God. No nests. No hives. Just lonely, miserable predators. I tracked one down in the ruins of a chemical plant outside Pripyat. An old one. It had been a scientist before it turned. As it lay dying, its skull shattered by a high-caliber round, it gurgled something at me in broken Russian. The Tumen. The fog, it is a key. Another time, I posed as a wealthy eccentric to meet one in Istanbul who was selling information for bags of hospital-grade blood. He was old, weary, and his crimson eyes held a profound boredom. "We don't feel much," he told me, his voice a dry rasp. "Anger fades. Joy is a forgotten language. All that remains is the hunger, and the quiet. An endless, grey quiet. The only high is the feeding. Not the blood itself, but what's in it. The life. The memories. We get a fleeting echo of what it's like to be alive." It was from him I learned the truth that chilled me more than any monster. The thing from my village, my two-man Russian for fog, was unique. It wasn't just another infected. It was patient zero. The original source. The Soviets hadn't created the virus, they'd found it, dormant in the ice, inside the body of something ancient. They tried to weaponize it, to control it. The outbreak in my village wasn't an accident. It was a failed field test. My home was their laboratory. My family, their lab rats. And the source, the original two-man, had escaped and returned to its hunting ground. To my home. Armed with this knowledge, my vengeance became a white-hot nova. It wasn't just a monster anymore. It was an enemy soldier. It was the embodiment of the cold, bureaucratic evil that had used my life as a footnote in a failed experiment. 40 years after I was dragged away, I returned. The village was skeletal, reclaimed by the taiga. I moved through the night like a wraith, my body thrumming with a lifetime of repressed hatred. The old fear was gone, replaced by a cold, surgical rage. I knew where to find it. Some atavistic instinct, some bond forged in terror all those years ago, pulled me towards the old cemetery. It was there, curled in a shallow den dug beneath the roots of a massive, dead larch. It looked small, pathetic. Not the towering, serpentine giant of my nightmares, but a gaunt, pale thing, no bigger than a teenager. In the moonlight, I could see its face clearly for the first time. It was just a boy. A boy with ancient, tired eyes, sleeping the dead sleep of its kind. My memory had been a child's memory, magnifying the monster in the dark. This thing wasn't a demon king. It was a prisoner. I raised my pistol, a custom-made PSS silent pistol loaded with a mercury-tipped hollow point. The culmination of my life's work was right there, in my sights. My finger tightened on the trigger. And I couldn't do it. A lifetime of hate, of planning, of sacrifice, and I couldn't pull the trigger. Because in that moment, looking at that pathetic, sleeping form, a horrifying thought wormed its way into my mind. If I killed it, what was left for me? My purpose would be gone. The fire that had fueled me for 4 decades would be extinguished, leaving only the cold, empty ash of a wasted life. Killing it wouldn't bring my parents back. It wouldn't heal me. It would just be an ending. And I was terrified of what came after. I saw myself in it. A creature defined by a single, all-consuming need. His was for blood. Mine was for vengeance. We were both slaves. But I couldn't leave with nothing. I needed a victory, however Pyrrhic. I holstered my pistol, pulled out my combat knife, and knelt. With a surgeon's precision, I sliced a small piece of flesh from its calf. It didn't even stir. The flesh was cold, rubbery. I sealed it in a sterile container, a trophy. A symbol of my dominance. And, in the darkest corner of my mind, a contingency plan. I left it there, sleeping in its grave. I let it go. That was my final mistake. The years that followed were a new kind of hell. The grey, empty quiet the vampire in Istanbul had described. Without the singular focus of my revenge, my own ghosts came for me. Remorse. Guilt. The ghost of the man I could have been, the family I might have had. The nightmares returned, but now they weren't just of the monster. They were of me, standing over that boy, knife in hand. The emptiness became a physical ache, a cancer of the soul. I was tired. So profoundly, bone-deep tired. The pistol seemed like a sweet release, but it felt too easy. Too clean. One night, staring at the small, refrigerated container on my desk, I made a decision. I understood what the Istanbul creature meant. The only escape from the quiet was to feel something, anything. I wanted out. And I remembered its effect on my mother. A swift, violent end. With a trembling hand, I opened the container. The flesh inside looked no different than the day I cut it. I didn't cook it. I ate it raw. It tasted of cold earth and ozone. It didn't kill me. Not in the way I'd hoped. The first change was euphoria. My senses sharpened. Colors were more vibrant. Sounds were symphonies. My aching body felt young, powerful. The nightmares, the guilt, the pain, they vanished. Wiped clean. For a week, it was paradise. I had finally escaped my ghosts. Then, the colors started to fade. Not from the world, but from inside me. The joy I felt at my new strength became simple acknowledgement of fact. The memory of my parents' faces, once a source of deep sorrow, became a simple data point. I remembered loving them. I just couldn't feel it anymore. My entire emotional landscape was being bleached, turning into a uniform, silent, monochrome gray. Now, I understand. The virus doesn't just make you a predator. It eats your soul. It consumes the very essence of who you are, leaving the memories and the body behind as a hollow vessel. I am the other kind of ghost now. I walk through my days, a perfect imitation of Viktor Sokolov. I remember his pain, his quest. But it's like watching a movie about a stranger. There's no sting. No catharsis. The only time the gray recedes is when the hunger comes. It's not a hunger for blood. It's a hunger for feeling. And when I find some drunk stumbling out of a bar, or a lonely soul on a late-night train, and I press my teeth to their neck, for a few precious seconds, as their life flows into me, I get a jolt. An echo of their fear. A shadow of their panic. A fleeting taste of what it means to be human. And then it's gone, and the silent, impenetrable, bottomless gray returns. The true horror isn't the monster in the dark. It's not the man made from mist. The true horror is the mist itself. The endless, eternal, boring gray. To live forever with the complete, unabridged library of all your life's tragedies, and not be able to shed a single tear. To know you are damned, not to hellfire, but to a state of perfect, unending neutrality. I still have my nightmares. I see my father's dying face. I see my mother's madness. I see the boy in the den. I see it all, every night. But now I just watch. There is no point to a tragedy that brings no sorrow. There is no point to a memory that carries no weight. I am the man made from mist. And I am utterly, eternally, empty.